When you hear the name Monkey King, you probably picture a mischievous trickster with a magic staff. You wouldn't be wrong, but do you know the story of how he stormed the underworld, took the Book of Life and Death, and literally crossed his own name off the list? Hey everyone, my name is Jason Hamilton. I'm a fantasy author, and this channel, Myth HQ, is dedicated to uncovering the incredible details behind the world's most fascinating legends. The story of Sun Wukong isn't just about a troublemaker, it's an epic of rebellion, layered immortality, and a quest for power that shook the heavens. Our story begins on the mystical Huaguo, the mountain of flowers and fruits. At its peak sat a magical rock that had been soaking up the essence of heaven and earth for eons. One day, a strong wind blew, the rock cracked open, and out popped a fully formed stone monkey. This was no ordinary birth. The first thing he did was bow to the four cardinal directions, and when he opened his eyes, two beams of golden light shot out, piercing the clouds and startling the Jade Emperor, the supreme ruler of the heavens. The Emperor sent his guards to investigate, but when they reported the light just came from a baby monkey, he dismissed it, and that was his first mistake. The stone monkey explored his new home and soon found a troop of other monkeys. He fit right in, but he was destined for more than just a normal life. One day the monkeys were playing by a huge waterfall and made a dare. Whoever could jump through the falls and find its source would be their king. Without a second thought, the stone monkey took the lead. He passed through the water and discovered a massive hidden paradise on the other side. A cave furnished with stone beds and bowls with a tablet declaring it the Water Curtain Cave. He led the other monkeys into this new home, and true to their word, they crowned him their king. He took the title Handsome Monkey King, and for hundreds of years he ruled in bliss, but that bliss wouldn't last. One day, one of his old monkey friends died. For the first time, the Monkey King was confronted with mortality, and the thought terrified him. He couldn't accept that his time on Earth had to end. So he built a raft and set out from his island of paradise on a quest to find someone who could teach him the secret to everlasting life. He sailed to the land of men, where people fled from his strange ape-like appearance. He stole some clothes to blend in and wandered for years, observing human folly and suffering that people brought on themselves. Eventually, he heard a woodcutter singing a strange song taught to him by an immortal sage who lived deep in the forest. The Monkey King followed this lead and found a temple belonging to the powerful Taoist master named Putizushi. The master initially refused him, but the monkey's determination was absolute. He waited outside the temple for months until Putizushi finally relented and took him as a student. The master gave him a new name, one full of purpose, Sun Wukong, which means monkey awakened to emptiness. Under Putizushi's guidance, Wukong became a master of supernatural arts. He learned the 72 earthly transformations, giving him the power to shapeshift into almost anything, with some traditions saying each transformation granted him an extra life. He also mastered the cloud somersault, a technique that let him travel over 30,000 miles in a single leap. Most importantly, Putizushi taught him the Taoist secret to true immortality, but his time at the temple ended abruptly when he was caught showing off his shape-shifting powers. Putizushi expelled him, making him swear to never reveal who his teacher was. Armed with incredible power, Sun Wukong returned to his mountain, but his quest for eternal life was far from over. When Wukong got back to Mount Huaguo, he found a demon had taken over in his absence. He easily defeated the demon, but realized he needed a weapon worthy of his new status. So he traveled to the underwater palace of Al Guang, the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea. After rejecting every weapon in the armory as too light, the Dragon King showed him a massive iron pillar used by the great hero Yu to measure the primordial floods. It was called the Ruyi Jingu Bang, the as-you-will gold-banded staff, and it weighed over 13,000 pounds. Wukong, however, lifted it effortlessly. The staff magically shrank to fit his grip and could change size at his command, from a mountain-sized pillar to a tiny needle he could tuck behind his ear. Not stopping there, he bullied the Dragon King and his brothers into giving him a suit of golden armor, a phoenix-feathered cap, and cloud-walking boots. Now he looked the part of a divine warrior. One night, Wukong was sleeping when his soul was dragged to the underworld by two soul catchers. They told him his time was up. Wukong was furious. He had achieved immortality, so how could this be? He broke free, beat the soul catchers to a pulp, and stormed his way to the 10 kings who judged the dead. He demanded to see the official record of all living beings, the Book of Life and Death. When they brought it out, he found his name, took out a brush, and scribbled it out. Then, for good measure, he crossed out the names of every monkey on his island too. He had just made himself and his entire kingdom immune to death. This was the second layer of immortality, and it was an act of rebellion that wouldn't go unnoticed. Also, I try to keep these videos free of sponsors or affiliate links because we're completely self-funded, but I do have something you might like, and that's my fantasy all-access library. It's where you can get all of my mythology-inspired fantasy novels that I and my team have written, all set in a huge shared universe where every mythology is real and coexists. I think you'll really like it, and it's how I'm able to keep this channel going, so if you're interested, the link is down below. The complaints started flooding into heaven. The Dragon King complained about the theft of his treasures, and the kings of the underworld reported Wukong's tampering with the cosmic order. The Jade Emperor was ready to send his armies, but an advisor suggested a more political solution. Offer Wukong a job in heaven. That way they could keep an eye on him. Wukong, flattered, accepted the offer, but when he arrived, he was made the keeper of the heavenly stables, a position called Bi Ma Wen. He was essentially a celestial stable boy. When he found out how low his rank really was, he was insulted. He abandoned his post, flew back to his mountain, and declared himself the great sage equal to heaven, a direct challenge to the Jade Emperor's authority. To avoid a war, the Emperor's advisors convinced him to humor the monkey. They officially recognized his new title and invited him back, this time giving him a seemingly more important job, guardian of the Garden of Immortal Peaches. And these weren't just any peaches. They were tended by the Queen Mother of the West, Shi Wongmu, and granted immortality to whoever ate them. Wukong was supposed to guard them, but he couldn't resist. He ate all the ripe ones. Things escalated when the Queen Mother planned her grand peach banquet for all the gods. Wukong discovered he wasn't on their guest list, and furious at the snub, he snuck into the banquet hall before anyone arrived, ate all the celestial food, and drank all of the immortal wine. Drunk and disorderly, he stumbled into the laboratory of the great sage Lao Tzu and ate a whole gourd full of his pills of immortality, the most powerful, life-extending elixirs in existence. Realizing he'd gone way too far this time, he fled back to Earth to prepare for war. The Jade Emperor, his patience finally gone, sent the full might of heaven to destroy the rebellious monkey. But Wukong, now supercharged with 3 different kinds of immortality, defeated the entire heavenly army single-handedly. Even heaven's greatest generals were no match for him. The fight only ended when the Emperor's nephew, the powerful warrior god Arlong Shen, was called in. They were evenly matched, a spectacular duel of shape-shifting and martial arts. Wukong was finally captured, but only after Lao Tzu sneak attacked him from behind, hitting him with a magical diamond ring that knocked him unconscious. And that's when they discovered their real problem. They couldn't actually kill him. Beheading, stabbing, fire, nothing worked. Sun Wukong's body was indestructible. Desperate, Lao Tzu suggested putting him in his 8 trigrams crucible, a mystical furnace hot enough to refine even gods. The plan was to cook him for 49 days and distill him back into the elixirs he'd stolen. But Wukong was clever. He'd found a corner of the furnace where there was only smoke and no fire and hid there. After 49 days, when they opened the lid, he burst out stronger than ever. The fire had only tempered his body, and the smoke had given him a new power: fiery eyes and golden pupils, the ability to see through any disguise and recognize evil. Enraged, he smashed the crucible and began tearing heaven apart. With the heavenly court in chaos and no one left who could stop him, the Jade Emperor made one final desperate appeal. He called upon the Buddha himself. When the Buddha arrived, Wukong arrogantly declared that he was more worthy of ruling heaven. The Buddha listened patiently, then made a simple wager. If Wukong could jump out of the palm of his hand, the throne of heaven would be his. If he failed, he would be banished to Earth to learn some humility. Wukong laughed. It seemed too easy. He was the master of the cloud somersault. He leaped into the Buddha's palm and took off, flying faster than thought. He traveled past stars and galaxies until he reached what he thought was the edge of the universe. 5 massive pillars stretching up into the infinite dark. To prove he'd been there, he wrote, "The great sage equal to heaven was here," on the middle pillar. Then, for good measure, he urinated at the base of another. He flew back to the Buddha, demanding his prize. But the Buddha just smiled. He showed Wukong his hand. There on his middle finger was Wukong's own writing. The 5 pillars at the edge of the universe had just been the Buddha's fingers. Wukong had never even left his palm. Before he could react, the Buddha flipped his hand over, turned it into a massive mountain of 5 elements that slammed down on Wukong, pinning him to the earth. The Buddha placed a paper talisman with a sacred mantra on the mountain, sealing him in place. And for 500 years, Sun Wukong was trapped with only his head and hands free, fed a diet of iron pellets and molten copper, left to contemplate his arrogance. The story of Sun Wukong is the centerpiece of one of the 4 great classic novels of Chinese literature, Journey to the West. While it's traditionally attributed to a 16th century novelist named Wu Chungung, much of the story comes from centuries of folk tales and oral traditions. The novel itself is a fictionalized telling of the real 7th century journey of the Buddhist monk Xuanzong, who traveled from China to India to retrieve sacred scriptures. The historical Xuanzong was a brave and brilliant scholar, but the novel transforms him into a naive and often helpless holy man who desperately needs needs protection. Sun Wukong's character is a fascinating blend of Taoist and Buddhist ideas. His quest for immortality is classic Taoism, while his name, Awakened to Emptiness, points to the core Buddhist concept of sunyata, the idea that all things lack inherent independent existence. Some scholars have pointed out the striking similarities between Sun Wukong and Hanuman, the Hindu monkey god from the epic Ramayana. Both are divine monkeys who can change their size, fly, and act as loyal protectors. And while there's no definite proof that Journey to the West was directly influenced by the Ramayana, the parallels suggest a shared tradition of stories that traveled along ancient trade routes. Ultimately, Wukong's journey from a defiant rebel fighting heaven to a devoted protector is an allegory for the Buddhist path to enlightenment, the taming of the ego or the monkey mind to achieve a higher state of being. Sun Wukong's story doesn't end under that mountain, of course. His imprisonment is just the beginning of his journey toward redemption. If you enjoyed this dive into this myth, you'll probably love the world we've built in our school group, the Fantasy All Access Library. It's more than just a place to get all of our ebooks and audiobooks, because we actually release at least one new novel every month. It's a community where we have weekly live calls to talk about myths and fantasy and writing, and you get all of our current and future books plus direct access to me and a community of other mythology fans. If that sounds cool, check out the link in the description, and I'll see you in the next video.